So moving on from looking at the plant cell, plant tissues and growth, we're now going to explore the plant processes, the four main processes that are occurring in the plant at any one time. Okay, looking at this rather busy slide, it's showing you an overview of the four processes that are going on within the plant and what components are required for those processes to proceed. So you can see red represents everything that's required for photosynthesis. The dark green represents respiration and what's required, what's happening within that process. The light green representing water movement or transpiration, which of course we'll see moves from the roots through the plant and out the leaves. And then of course there's nutrient uptake, which of course is associated with water movement and transpiration, and of course that's moving those nutrients from the soil into the parts of the plant where they are actually required. So once we've looked at the processes, you can come back to the slide and get an overview of everything that's going on within the plant at any one time, and that's of course during the day, because of course photosynthesis is the only process that occurs in daylight only. The rest of the processes will occur 24 hours a day. Okay, let's look at transpiration. Transpiration is the loss of water vapour by land plants. It takes place mainly in the stomata, which of course are the small pores that you find in the leaves, on the underside of leaves. The basic requirements for transpiration is water, which of course is absorbed from the roots, and conditions that are suitable for the evaporation of water. So what we're talking about here is warm temperatures and just slight winds, anything that's going to help that water movement throughout the plant. The basic process of transpiration is that you have water which is being absorbed by the root hairs through a process called osmosis, which we'll be talking about a little later, which is then drawn up the xylem vessels through a process called capillary action, which is a little bit like liquid being drawn up a straw. And from that, the water then goes through the vascular tissues into the leaves and the veins, and from the veins out through these little pores or stomata that we'll find on the underside of the leaves. What happens as a result of this process is that fluid is drawn up through the plant, so you've got transport of all sorts of nutrients and minerals happening inside the plant. And also because of this water movement, you have a cooling effect on the plant. So now we're on to photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process that we have in green plants that synthesizes or builds up sugar from water and carbon dioxide using energy which is absorbed by the chlorophyll from sunlight. It is found in the leaves or any green cells on the plant, and of course it happens inside the chloroplasts within those cells. The basic requirements: we must have light shining on the leaf or the plant, we need water, which of course is absorbed by the roots, and carbon dioxide, which is taken from the air through the stomata into the leaves. The basic process of photosynthesis is that the energy that is absorbed from the sunlight is taken into the pigment chlorophyll in the chloroplasts and is used by the plant to combine carbon dioxide with water to produce sugars. Oxygen is a waste product of this process. The result being that the sugar is the primary source of food for the plant, and that's what provides the plant with its energy needs. So those sugars can be used immediately, or they can be stored for use at a later stage. You may recall when you were at school, we talked about equations for different processes, and one of those equations was photosynthesis. The equation was CO2 plus H2O under the presence of light forms C6H12O6 plus O2. So this slide here is a diagrammatic representation of what that actually means. I'm just going to explain what it's all about. So we're going to be talking about molecules and we're going to be talking about atoms. So if you have a look at that leaf, you can see that there's some razor light shining onto that. Okay, so that's the sunlight, that's the energy that's coming from the sun, going into the chloroplasts within the cells, and within those chloroplasts we have the chlorophyll, which is responsible for breaking and rebuilding molecules. Moving around the leaf, you can see that there's an arrow that goes into the leaf. Now that's representing CO2, carbon dioxide. So what we'll find that with that is we'll find one atom of carbon, which is represented by black, and attached to that two atoms of oxygen, so representing CO2. Also, we need water for photosynthesis to occur, and you can see that there's an arrow pointing into the leaf stalk, and from that there is a molecule of H2O. So within that diagram we should see two atoms of hydrogen represented in green, and attached to those one atom of oxygen, H2O. Once carbon dioxide and water has been absorbed into the plant, the molecules are then broken down and then they're rebuilt again, and they're rebuilt into another substance, and that substance is carbohydrate, which is represented by C6H12 and O6. So that means that we would have 6 atoms of carbon, 12 atoms of hydrogen, and 6 atoms of oxygen, making up the molecule of sugar or carbohydrates, or the plant's food. Through that process we actually get some oxygen left over, and that's our byproduct. And you can see on that diagram, coming out of the leaf there's an arrow, and that's representing O2, oxygen, which is 2 atoms of oxygen making up the molecule oxygen itself. So that's really just a little bit of chemistry. Let's now look at respiration. Respiration is the process of converting that stored food into usable energy. It occurs in the cells and tiny organelles called the mitochondria, and it occurs in all living cells within a plant. The basic requirements for respiration are sugars, which of course are produced from photosynthesis, and oxygen, which is taken from the air. The basic process of respiration is the sugar and the oxygen are converted into carbon dioxide and water with the release of energy. The result being that the energy that's been stored in the sugar is now made available for plant growth and development, and carbon dioxide and water just happen to be the byproducts. Looking at the differences between photosynthesis and respiration, they are kind of opposite to each other. This diagram represents what's happening during the day with photosynthesis, with CO2 being absorbed into the plant and O2 moving out of the plant. And then of course with respiration, which occurs both in day and night, you'll see that you've got oxygen which is coming into the plant, and you've got carbon dioxide and water vapor moving out of the plant. And of course with that you've got the energy that's being released to enable the carbohydrates to be broken down for growth processes. Taking the last slide one step further, if we really had a look at the differences between photosynthesis and respiration, we could formulate a table that would look very much like this. So photosynthesis produces food, respiration uses food. Photosynthesis stores energy, respiration releases energy. Photosynthesis uses water, respiration produces water. Photosynthesis uses carbon dioxide, respiration produces carbon dioxide. Photosynthesis releases oxygen, respiration uses oxygen. Photosynthesis occurs only in the sunlight, respiration occurs in light and dark. Photosynthesis results in an increase in weight. So if you think about the sugars that are being produced, they need to be stored somewhere. So wherever they happen to be stored will increase the weight of that particular part of the plant. Whereas respiration results in a decrease of weight because those sugars are being burnt. And of course, photosynthesis occurs only in green cells, whereas respiration occurs in all living cells within the plant. So as growers, what can we do to maximize the plant processes, which essentially means that the plants will be growing and developing to their full potential? First thing is we need to ensure that they've got adequate nutrition. They've got those nutrients and the minerals that are required for all the processes. There's adequate soil water around the root zone. If there's any water stress at all, the plant will react by closing the stomata, closing the pores, and then of course no respiration, no transpiration, no photosynthesis will occur. Warm temperatures are ideal. Around about 25 degrees Celsius is the temperature that most plants seem to respond the best to. Full sunlight, so you want as maximum amount of sunlight shining onto those leaves to allow that photosynthesis to proceed. Any sort of shading will slow down that process. Healthy roots, that is an active growth and obviously not diseased, will aid with that water and mineral uptake. And mature leaves, so mature leaves you want to get as quickly as possible a mature canopy, so the plant can photosynthesize to its maximum potential. And also important, of course, is oxygen in the root zone. So oxygen, we know, is required for respiration to occur, but also for the absorption of minerals. So without oxygen, you won't have that absorption happening. So we want to avoid any sort of wet conditions that's going to limit the amount of oxygen that we find in the root zone.